The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, Pre-Wedding Jitters, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Unmatched, Cobble, and Fog from Restoration Games. Then the Dukes will take a look back at their review of Century: A New World in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And also Alex.
And this is episode 232. That was an unenthusiastic and also Alex. But anyway, this is episode 232, Exploration, my dear Watson. Exploration, my dear Watson. That name suggestion, that title suggestion, in fact, from our guild listener, Baker Mitchell. We get all of our help naming our episodes from the guild. And we do that, Alex, because we're bad at naming episodes. Because what Baker here has demonstrated is the blending of our main review game and our Duke's Double Take game. So, of course, we're talking about Cobble and Fog, which features Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And, of course, there's that quote, elementary, my dear Watson. And then, of course, we're talking about Century Spice Road, A New World. Am I doing that right? Century Spice, A New World? Century,
Yes.
New World, Spice?
There's no spice in it. It's just Century: A New World.
Century: A New World. Well, it's a spicy game, Alex. So don't say there's no spice.
Spice Century, a new Spice Girl.
Exactly. Which Spice Girl, Alex, would you identify most with? That's what everyone really wants to know.
Probably Sporty?
Okay. Yeah. All right. I could see that. Which one would you associate me with most, Alex?
Baby Spice.
Incorrect. that's the for giggles. And I did not giggle.
The actual one, Scary Spice.
The actual one? Oh, the actual one. You meant like
the actual one, Scary Spice.
Okay. Mel, is her name Mel B? Is that her name?
Maybe. I'm not, I gotta admit, I'm not fully up on my Spice Girls lore. I have heard several Spice Girls songs.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, thanks to Baker for that episode name. And like I was mentioning before, we get help naming all of our episodes over on our Board Game Geek Guild. Amazing listeners over there that help us. Cause like I said, Alex, we're not good at naming these episodes. So we've got some runners up, which we will give you at the end of the episode. Yeah. So Alex, what's up with you? How you doing?
I'm stressed. Work is busy.
Yeah. Why are you stressed? What do you have to stress about?
As of the day of this recording, I am 10 days away from walking down some version of an aisle with Abby, my fiance, soon to be Abby. And this is tricky. I don't know if I have to go to Abby, my spouse, or Abby, my wife, and kind of
no.
I don't think it's a good idea.
Please don't do that. So here's what my big takeaway from that. You mentioned, and this is the most important aspect that I'm interested in. You mentioned that some kind of aisle. I think an aisle has to be flanked either by walls or by chairs or pews. Is there any other way to define an aisle? I could be wrong. There could be other ways.
No, it sounds about right to me.
Okay.
There, I believe, will be an aisle.
Okay.
What I will say is this. The Gamers Ranch is designed for many wonderful things, the location where I'm getting married. It has never hosted a wedding before. So where exactly to set things up to where it'll make some degree of sense, we're not sure. We're kind of playing it by ear. We know that there are chairs. We plan on having a runner, but we don't know exactly where on the site it will make sense. I haven't checked the weather lately. We don't know if it's going to be raining. There's all sorts of funny things that could kind of cause changes. But luckily enough, it's a ceremony where, 12, 15 of us are present, so it's not that hard to move things.
I feel like you brushed off my aisle questioning.
Oh, sorry.
Because I did recall there's also aisles and stores, but those are flanked by shelves.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. I don't have another definition to
countermand
you.
Well, I just thought our listeners might find it interesting to hear us talk about aisles. Sorry. Excuse me.
Sean's Isle Musings. Maybe you should start up a new podcast.
An Isle podcast.
The Archdukes of Isles.
It would be, no, never mind. I was about to make a really stupid joke, and it's really not worthwhile. I'm glad I.
Well, now you have to tell it.
No. I'm pulling the ripcord. It was going to be really bad, just bad. Anyway.
But now everyone's going to wonder what the joke was.
And that they're going to be better off wondering. The wonder is better than the reality.
Okay, Sean, you're editing this later, so just edit this next part out where you tell me what the joke is.
Right. So it's going to be a podcast called Rizzoli and Isles. And it's going to be half about the show Rizzoli and Isles, which I've never seen an episode of. So it'll be me discovering Rizzoli and Isles. But then the other half of the podcast will also be about Isle and Isle technology.
I think that is one of those is likely to be a richer vein of thinking than the others. I
don't know. I mean, if it's done with someone with talent, which I'm not saying is me in any way, shape, or form, but if someone were to resurrect like Mitch Hedberg, have you ever listened to Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, the stand-up?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I feel like, man, Mitch Hedberg. Did I talk about him on the show a couple months ago?
Maybe.
Okay. Anyway, we watched Mariah. I introduced him to Mariah. Watched a bunch of his stand-up, cracked Mariah up. Mitch Hedberg was a genius. Died very young. Very sad. Anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Whew, Debbie Downer over here.
Yeah, I was going to say, by the way, in lieu of a Dukes of Diet update, which I know we all want to keep track of, I think the bigger question on the guild's mind from looking there is the mystery of Anthony P. Anthony P and I. Give some background on this for folks who didn't listen to last episode.
So last episode was our 6-year anniversary. Was that right? 6 year?
Yes.
That was our 6th year. Oh my goodness. Was our 6-year anniversary episode. And we did, in lieu of our updated top 10 games of all time, we did our top 6 gaming experiences. And one of those gaming experiences was talking about an old buddy of mine, Anthony P. I say that because I didn't want to say his last name because, I hadn't talked to him in a while. Didn't know if that was cool and whatever. So Anthony and I really close from like 2003-ish to 2010. Even we're friends in Phoenix, even after I moved from Phoenix to Tucson to go to law school, still stayed in close contact. And then once I moved to Albuquerque, like we just stopped communicating. Not for any particular reason, just stopped. And it was just weird because we were so close and we were communicating so often. And it was super strange.
So wait, before you dive in, there is a fan theory from D. Shannon.
We're being shipped. He's shipping us.
Yeah, he was curious if it was your buddy having this big unrequited crush this whole time.
I don't think so. We haven't discussed that. I'll bring that up with him.
Okay. Well, but the story is you have had discussions with Mr. Anthony P.
Yeah, we have. So I emailed him that night, and I said, "Hey, long time. I know we haven't talked in a very long time, and I don't really know why." I gave him kind of a quick update about what I was doing and, what I was doing in life with the family, with the podcast. And I said, I brought this up, or I thought about this because, we were talking about our top 6 gaming moments, and I kind of ran through it with him. And then I waited. And that morning or the next morning, I got an email back from him. He was super excited to have heard from me. And we've sent a handful of emails back and forth, just kind of catching up on where we've both been. He said, "Hey, can you shoot me a link to the podcast? I'd really like to listen to it." So he went ahead and listened to it and found it pretty touching, pretty moving. I mean, like I said, I don't think I was imagining things. We were really close friends for an extended period of time. So we're kind of, working on maybe getting some time to chat, some time to play games together online. I think I can tell you right now, and he may listen to this, like for me, there is a bit of awkwardness, and the awkwardness is because of differences of where we're both in life right now. So where I was in life then, my ex at the time, I think I mentioned, would go to bed really early. She'd go to bed at like 8 o'clock at night. And then I'd be up for the next 6 hours because I used to go to bed really late all the time. And I can't really do that anymore. So I almost feel like there's this reluctance to like jump back into regular like vocal communication. Because we're just in different places in life than we were then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if does that make sense?
It does. And you got to feel things out. Like it's some of it, I guess, probably feels like riding a bike. But even if, that expression gets used a lot, it usually takes a second or two when you're on a bike to feel perfectly normal, I guess. I don't know.
I suspect that as soon as we start talking, it's going to be like, this time hasn't passed. Like very, very rarely have I had a friend like Anthony. So I look at people that I had, that close friends that I may have lost touch with for a year or two, people like Ellie and Mitch. And we kind of just pick up right where we left off. And so I think I'm anticipating that, but just a little reluctant, which is kind of weird. It's kind of, D. Shannon's observation, like it almost feels like reaching out to a long lost lover. Wow, that's weird. That's super awkward. Did I mention in the last episode, our friends at the shop used to make fun of us because we would bicker like an old married couple? Did I mention that?
I think so.
And also, apparently, after I left, for quite some time, people at the shop at Imperial Outpost Games in Phoenix, Glendale technically, would often make fun of him and accused him of breaking up me and my ex because it was his idea to play the practical joke of getting back into Magic. So not 100% inaccurate, but somewhat accurate.
Not inaccurate either, it seems.
Not inaccurate. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
So yeah, very exciting. Very happy I did that. You know what I did? quick side note, and then we'll move on to some game talk. When I was looking for our email thread in my Gmail account, I just typed in his name real quick, and I saw that there was like a Christmas email from him 4 years ago in 2016 that for whatever reason I just completely missed.
Oh, so you're the jerk.
I am the jerk. It was just an email and it was just like, hey, haven't talked to you in a while. Hey, what's your new phone number? We need to catch up. And I was just like,
oh no.
Oh my God. Like for the most part, I very rarely will like check my email. I'll usually just see when a notification comes up and then go see it if it's something I need to worry about. So yeah. But yeah, it's good. Things are good. Things are great, Alex. Things are great.
I gotta be honest, just slightly worried that maybe a month from now, there's going to be a different Duke. It's going to be a new Duke, and then it's going to be a different Duke at some point. Just like 5% worried.
So he doesn't play much in the way of miniatures anymore. Miniatures was like our main thing back then. He doesn't play too much in the way of miniatures. He plays the Cool Mini. Is it Cool Mini or not that does Song of Ice and Fire miniatures?
Yes.
And he still does Epic, which is the Warhammer 40,000 variant, which is a much smaller scale, but you've got like way more troops and tanks and all sorts of stuff. But he does play some board games. He's got a board game group, like you like Scythe and some others. One of the things that we always used to do, he bought the super deluxe Catan, like the $400 Catan. And that was something that we played a lot back in the day. So yeah, I think we'll probably arrange some times. I know Ellie and Andy really enjoy playing Scythe online. So maybe we'll set up a 4-player at some time, and maybe some time for Anthony and I just to kind of catch up and talk some Dresden Files too. So
I feel like you buried the lead with this story. The whole, he sent an email 4 years ago and I never saw it, I think is kind of the lead with all of this.
Okay.
Yeah. Just saying.
Just rubbing salt in the wound.
Yeah. No, it's just interesting. That's all.
Well, I didn't see it and ignore it. I just didn't see it.
No, I know that, but it adds this kind of dramatic twist to the story. The expectations of, he doesn't want to connect. Oh, he doesn't care anymore, kind of thing. I'm just putting myself in Anthony P's shoes, and it's a fascinating ride.
I can imagine like what it would be like for someone not to have me in their life, and that just sounds terrible. Just sounds terrible.
Oh, of course. course. Hey, let's talk about games.
Let's, Alex. Let's.
Go first, Sean.
Okay. Well, you know what, Alex? I have not been doing a whole lot of new gaming in the last couple of weeks. And let me very briefly tell you why not. We have been furiously getting Chewy set up for homeschooling. We are homeschooling her this year. She was going to a private school and they were doing 0 at-home learning. It was all going to be in person. And then they started sending out some email indicators that they were going to be very lax on their mask requirements. And so we were just like, this is not good. So we pulled out, started looking for homeschool curriculum because I'm not going to get into all of it because I'm about to talk about games. But the long story short is that for the last 2 weeks, we've been researching homeschool curriculum. We've been equipping the shed. Raquel has this really nice shed out back with this nice workbench. We've been setting up as her classroom. We're getting it set up with power, electricity, so we can have a swamp cooler in there, a heater. Eventually, this weekend we're going to be insulating it and kind of just finishing it off over probably the next 2 weekends. And Mariah, instead of getting a job, we're going to pay her to homeschool Chewy. So they started Wednesday, which was yesterday as of the time of recording. So they've had 2 days in, but it's been pretty crazy doing that. So not a whole lot of time for new gaming. I will mention briefly some of the things that I have been doing. So I taught just the other night, Raquel how to not play Magic. She's played Magic before, but specifically how to play my favorite version of Magic, Commander Magic. I said, hey, do you just want to learn to play this? Because I've been really jonesing to play Commander. So for those that don't know, just very briefly, it's 100 card singleton Magic where you have exactly 100 cards. No duplicates are allowed except for basic land. And it's just a really fun format because you start with extra life, double life. And so you could play a bunch of really expensive spells. There's like these big haymaker spells that would normally be too slow or too inefficient in regular Magic. Super fun format. And she really enjoyed it. I think a lot of times in the past when I've taught her Magic, it's been like sort of a very stripped down basic Magic. And she was like, yeah, that was fine. But it was kind of underwhelming by intention. And I said, I'm going to push into the deep end because that's what Commander is. Because you've got like 80 different mechanics and all sorts of weird stuff. And so she really enjoyed it. And she's like, yeah, I would consider playing this regularly. Also, speaking of card games, tonight, because Chewy had a fantastic first day of school, I told her I would teach her to play Pokemon, the card game.
Oh.
So brief background, I have never played Pokemon, the card game, before this week. So she really likes Pokemon. When Pokemon Go first came out, she would do it with me and Raquel. Even I haven't really played it all in years. Raquel will still kind of do it. Chewy has a pretty, more than a passing interest in Pokemon. She's not super obsessed with them, but she really likes Pokemon. She really likes Pikachu. She really likes Eevee. And so she's expressed interest. And then Raquel at some point pre-COVID had found a bunch of Pokemon cards at a Goodwill store. And so Chewy's kind of been like looking at them and collecting them. And the other night she's like, can you teach me how to play with these cards? I'm like, well, I don't think so. Cause I think it's just like a random collection of cards. I don't think we have enough of the energy cards, which you need to play. And I said, so tell you what, I will find online 2 starter decks for us to play. And I'll teach you how to play when they come in. So me not having played Pokemon before ever, I downloaded the Pokemon online and I've played like 20 games of Pokemon this week.
Okay.
Online, just against the computer. And it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. So it is a stripped down Magic. It's the same company that made Magic, Wizards of the Coast. And you basically have a Pokemon that is your active Pokemon that is trying to attack your opponent's active Pokemon. You have Pokemon on a bench and you are putting 1 energy per turn on them, which is going to let them use certain activated abilities, including attacks. The goal is to basically wipe out 6 of your opponent's Pokemon. And if you do that, you win. That's kind of the long and short of it. What makes this game different from a game like Magic is there are no instants. In other words, there's nothing you can really do on your opponent's turn. Everything's happening on your turn. Magic has a pre-combat main phase and then a post-combat main phase with combat in the middle. This only lets you really have one main phase with a combat at the end of it. And combat has to be the last thing that you do. So my first couple games of it were very basic, and I was like, oh, there's not much going on here. But then I played some other decks with some other abilities beyond just attacking. There's some interesting deck manipulation and some other things you can do. So it's pretty interesting. I'm a little nervous. Chewy isn't a super strong reader as of yet, but she's got a really good memory. So I think that this, once I tell her what cards do, I think she will remember it. Like, she's got a killer memory. And then I think it's going to help. I think the biggest downfall of this game for teaching someone Chewy's age is the hit points are in tens, right? So it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 hit points. And so her number sense is good, but tens are going to be harder than like singles. So like, instead of a Pokemon with 60 hit points, if it had 6 hit points, I think she would do better with that right now, but we'll see. And if it helps math and if it helps reading, great. So I'll report back how that goes. So that's some CCG goodness, Alex. You played Pokemon back in the day, right?
I did. There used to be Pokemon League gyms at Toys R Us. And so I remember distinctly going to Toys R Us and playing in some of those events. And I got my first gym badge, and then I never got anywhere past that because I wasn't very good at the game. I did collect the cards. I have a lot of them that my dad brought me back from Japan, some of which I've started to sell on eBay, and there's a decent market on eBay for Pokemon cards because, hey, it's still pretty popular. I think I sold something like really $250 worth among 5 or 6 cards. So not terrible, not great. I also remember distinctly, Sean, that I would, knowing the rarity of cards and not being an older kid, I was, I think, 10 or 11 when this was going on, but older than some of the kids who were playing, would make trades for uncommons for rares, those kinds of things. And I distinctly remember fleecing a kid or two out of a rare through some lopsided trades. So, hey, if your favorite Pokemon happens to be an uncommon and you have this rare that you don't care about, whatever, just send it along. They didn't know how to read rarities, I guess. These 7 and 8 year olds. So I remember fleecing kids out of their Pokemon cards. So yes, I did play Pokemon, but do not anymore, and still have a bunch of the cards and am working on selling them. So very cool that game has continued on even into this generation. I did, oddly enough, just before we jumped on to record the podcast, Sean, I saw an ad for the Pokemon TCG starter set or CCG starter set that was trying to teach families how to play this game. So really fascinating. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe our good friend Mike Fitzgerald had some involvement at one point with Pokemon, with helping with the pre-constructed decks.
Yeah, he designed a bunch of the pre-constructed decks. Yeah. So
very cool. Well, awesome. So yeah, Pokemon living forever, which is, I guess, good if I keep holding on to these cards. Maybe I should hold on to them a little longer and see if the price keeps going up. I don't know. Sean, first game I'm going to talk about is a trick-taking game that I played online and have since insta-bought. It's a game called Papayoo from Gigamic.
Papa Me?
What's that?
Papa Me. Never mind. Go on. Continue.
No, it's a terrible joke, and
I'm
very disappointed
joke.
in you. I mean,
Papa Me?
Papa who? So, Papayoo is a trick-taking game. And it's a standard trick-taking game in many respects. There are 5 suits, not 4 suits. And the suits range in value from 1 to 10. There's the special 5th suit, the Papayoo suit, that ranges, or it's, I think I don't know, there's some name for it. The Papayoo suit, that ranges in value from 1 to 20. Your objective in this game is to avoid taking points. There's no shooting the moon or anything like that. And it's a trick-taking game. So if I lead with a heart, you have to follow hearts if you have them. Here's the trick. If you don't have any hearts, you can play some of these Papayoo cards. And the Papayoo cards are worth negative whatever their face value is. So if I win a trick a hearts trick that includes the Papayoo or the Papayoo 20, then guess what? I lose 20 points. And final scores in this game range something like negative 350 to negative 175, basically. There's one other little twist, which is each round you'll roll a die that gets to one of the 4 suits. That suit has what's known as the Papayoo card. The 7 of that suit is worth negative 40 points. Negative 40 points. So if you take that specific card, you're getting hit with a huge slam of negative points. So you have the Papayoo card and the Papayoo cards. You pass a certain number of cards before the round starts, and it's a standard trick-taking game. It's a lot of fun because you're trying to stick people with these points. When things go south, they go very south very quickly. And enjoyable, light, but a lot of fun. So I enjoyed playing Papayoo enough online that I went and bought it. Had to find it on eBay. It's not a very well in stock game, but a really enjoyable trick-taking game if that's your cup of tea. So that's Papayoo from Gigamic.
Speaking of tea, Alex, did you plan that segue? You didn't plan that segue,
I
did you?
didn't plan that segue.
Well, it's a great segue because speaking of tea, Alex, I played the expansion to Fields of Arle called Tea and Trade. It's almost like we're professionals, except professionals wouldn't point out how they're almost like professionals. You know what I mean?
I am not a professional, explicitly.
Do you remember how good Conan O'Brien is at segues? Like he would make these amazing. Anyway, Tea and Trade expansion for Fields of Arle. Alex, did you ever play Fields of Arle?
At no point have I played Fields of Arle.
Oh, you would really dig Fields of Arle. It is, would Abby like Fields of Arle? Whoo, maybe. It would, maybe. It's a 2-player only game, and it's an Uwe Rosenberg game, and I've probably played it at least a dozen times. Raquel and I have played it quite a bit, and I've had the Tea and Trade expansion for a while now. In fact, it came out in 2017, and I think I bought it when it first came out. And I remember at one point, Raquel and I playing Fields of Arle and forgetting that I had the expansion. And then we realized like halfway through, oh shoot, we should have played with the expansion. And then we just didn't play it again for like another year or two. So good job us. So Fields of Arle, the base game, basically you are a farmer. It's an Uwe game, right? You got to be a farmer. And you have these moors that you're trying to clear, and you get peat, which is a resource that you use to burn and keep warm. You're building these fields, but more so, you're also extending your dike network because there's flooding, there's coastal flooding, and so you have to deal with that to open more land. This land you're going to build buildings on, or you're going to plant certain types of fields, or you're going to have pens and enclosures for different types of animal husbandry for your sheep, cows, and horses, I believe. And this uses a really cool worker placement system where there is I think it's a spring side and a winter side. And so there are certain actions you can take in spring, certain actions you can take in the winter. And the number of each action that you can take is based on a tool level for each action, and you could take actions to improve your tool efficiency to give you more powerful actions. So there's no method in this game to gain additional workers. You only have 4 workers per season, but like I said, there are ways to make the placement of those workers more efficient. There's also an interesting mechanic where even though it's the spring, one player may place out of season one time, which potentially changes the turn order for that next season. And ultimately, you are trying to collect certain resources to turn into buildings or to ship off to nearby towns. Really good game, really interesting, like it quite a bit. So what does this expansion offer? Well, the big thing, Alex, which I didn't get to benefit from, is it adds a 3rd player, which is pretty interesting. That's one of the really cool things about Fields of Arle. Oh, that's right. Susan and I reviewed this a while back.
It was a Duke's review. I just wasn't on it.
Yeah, it was Sue's. That's right. Huh. Okay. Anyway, so the Tea and Trade expansion offers, like I said, a 3rd player. And then it also offers a new resource, tea, or cocaine, apparently, because the big thing about the tea is you use it to make your workers' actions more powerful. They get super jacked up on this East Frisia tea, apparently. So, it's an upper, I guess, which makes sense.
Well, I will tell you from traveling in Peru, had plenty of coca tea.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
it's very good.
Okay.
Just saying, it's a thing.
It's a thing. Tell your friends. So it adds this tea, which again is a resource that can be spent on certain types of buildings because there's a bunch of new buildings that get added. And then there is, like I said, it can be expended for increased action efficiency. It also adds a shipping component. So before you were sending off your goods overland by different types of carts and wagons, now there's a shipping component where you're sending stuff overseas, and you'll be able to do that along with the shipping overland for different effects. There's also this new dehydration mechanic, which is an alternate way to dehydrate the fields instead of moving the dikes back. Overall, it was just okay. It wasn't what I would call a must-have expansion. I mean, if you're really jonesing to play Fields of Arle at 3 players instead of 2, then yeah, okay, I'm interested to try it. It seemed to add a certain amount of fiddliness for fiddliness sake. And it wasn't a big wow for me. I will highly recommend Fields of Arle. Fields of Arle is a 6. And I don't know that this necessarily would bring that down. It certainly didn't improve on it much. And I still want to give it some more shots because the nice thing is it adds a bunch of buildings, but I don't know that the added complexity adds a whole lot. And that's an interesting thing with expansions. There are some expansions that, I would consider must-haves. And then there are others that are just like, might be nice every now and then. And then there's some that are just take it or leave it. I wouldn't say this is quite take it or leave it, but it's probably somewhere in between that and I try it every now and then. Like I said, I definitely want to try it at 3 players. That was kind of the charm of Fields, is that it was a 2-player only game. There's plenty of really good Uwe games that are, 3 or more players as well. So, but I think you should check it out. There's a decent chance Abby might like Fields of Arle.
Just from I think the look of it would maybe turn her off a little bit.
Okay.
But it's possible on a play she might enjoy it.
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward with interesting depth, and it's not a super punishing Uwe game.
Okay.
So
good.
Because there are some games, some Uwe games that are just super punishing that some players just don't enjoy.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll have to check it out.
So that's Fields of Arle.
Nice. Well, next one I'll talk about, Sean, was not originally put out by one of our sponsors, but is coming over to the US by one of our sponsors. So I'll put that out as a disclosure. This is Smartphone Inc., which is being brought over by Arcane Wonders, originally done by Cosmodrome Games. Sean, have you played this game yet?
I have not. I have certainly not.
I think you would really like this, or at the very least find it interesting. This is a game where you are a smartphone manufacturer, and you are trying to make the most money selling smartphones, trying to kind of play with demand in different markets, have a phone with the right attractive price, be able to sell with the right features, and then open up through logistics into different markets. How this works mechanically is before you start each round, you have these 2 different boards that allow you to adjust your price or allow you to adjust your amount of logistics actions or your amount of research actions. And you'll have to kind of cover up between the 2 boards. You'll be getting these upgrade boards as the game goes on, which gives you access to more actions per turn. And how it's going to work is whoever has the lowest price will ultimately get to sell their phones first in markets where you're competing. Players with higher prices get to sell last, but they get to sell for more. And if this sounds familiar, it felt a lot like one of the kind of a food chain magnate-esque kind of experience in terms of how demand was managed, or Indonesia. but a good amount lighter and felt more thematic and enjoyable to me. This game was really dope. So yeah, you have different actions. Some of those actions include opening up into new markets through trucks. So if I'm selling in, say, South America and I want to move into the North American market, I have to spend a certain number of trucks to do that. But once I'm there, great for me. I can now compete with you and try and undercut you on price or offer features that your phone doesn't. With research actions, I can gain things like Wi-Fi and location services and all sorts of fun things, which will give me different abilities, but will also enable me to sell my phones in places that I couldn't before. You do this over the course of, I believe, 6 rounds, and that's it. Super snappy. Phases well managed. Played great online. Obviously, I played this one online with Suze and Aaron from Boards Alive, and really dug this one, Sean. It's coming over, I think, as a Dice Tower Essentials game, and I think it accomplishes the kind of feel I wanted in something like Food Chain Magnate, but does it without aggravating me and does it in a lot shorter period of time.
Okay.
So that's Smartphone Inc. coming over from Arcane Wonders. Really enjoyed it. Really clicked with me, and one that I'd recommend folks check out if they haven't played it already. So that is Smartphone Inc., and that is what we've been playing. Let's take it on over to the news desk. Sean, you have taken over the news desk this time around. You've filled in everything. So take it away. I don't know any of these stories.
Okay, so yeah, just a couple things here. First, Alex, did you see the new trailer for The Batman that came out a week ago?
Yes, I did see the trailer for the new Batman. I may see it. I may not see it. I'm unsure at this point. I will say that the Christopher Nolan Batman movies are pretty dang hard to top.
Yeah. Batman Begins is good. The first 3 of 4 acts of The Dark Knight are really good. Did you notice I mentioned there's a 4th act in The Dark Knight, and it really annoys me. And I think Dark Knight Returns was a hot mess, but that's fine. So yeah, this is the new The Batman movie by Matt Reeves, the director, with Robert Pattinson, who hopefully will not be sparkling. I'm giving Robert Pattinson wide berth here. That's not the right term. I'm giving him free reign. No, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. How about that? And that sounds condescending. I don't mean it to sound condescending. I think he's a good actor. Have you seen The Lighthouse, Alex?
I've not seen The Lighthouse.
Nope. So we have it ready to go. We're going to hopefully watch it this weekend. I hear it's fantastic. Just a really intricate, like, psychological thriller with these 2 isolated dudes in a lighthouse. Willem Dafoe is really intense. So anyway, this dropped. I'm pretty interested. It's featuring Batman as the world's greatest detective, which most of the movies haven't really done. And anytime I've read the Batman comics, unless it's Batman with the Justice League doing, like, crazy stuff, I really liked the especially detective comics, the detective side of Batman. So I'm interested. But what was interesting here is that the Riddler, who is in this movie, poses a riddle to the Batman, and he leaves it at a crime scene. The new Jim Gordon shows it to Batman, and basically it's a card, and it says, "What does a liar do when he's dead?" And then there is a cipher script, basically, where there's replacement letters or replacement symbols that you're meant to decode and try and figure out, what letters or what, ciphers represent what letters. All right. What does this have to do with our board game podcast, Alex, you ask?
I have no idea, Sean. What does this have to do with our board game podcast?
I was hoping you knew, because I don't know either. That's not true.
Oh.
I'll just tell you. So Mike Selinker, famed game designer Mike Selinker, designer of one of our favorite games, Pathfinder adventure card game, one of the runners over at Lone Shark Games, prolific designer, designed a bunch of stuff. He said, "You know what? I'm going to break the code, and I'm going to show you how I did it." And this got picked up by a bunch of online publications. I saw it on, like, Forbes and I think I saw in Huffington Post. I saw it like a couple different places. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool. So basically in his Twitter, and I'm not going to tell you the answer. You can either go solve it for yourself. It's out there and you could solve it if you'd like, or you can go through Mike's Twitter feed where he has a whole 12 tweet breakdown of how he solves this, how you solve a cipher basically. And so his Twitter is at Mike Selinker. That's Selinker. And I just thought it was pretty cool. And just the fact that, mainstream online outlets were picking it up and talking about Mike, I thought was pretty cool.
Cool. Good job, Mike, I guess. I don't know. I watched the trailer and I was kind of in this mode of, I don't know if I trust DC on anything these days. I'm not sure. We'll see.
So it's not part of the DC extended universe. It's its own continuity, but so was Joker, right?
Yeah, and Joker was good. Yeah, I did see Joker. Would not want to watch it again, but it was good.
I think them trying to force this DC EU, and instead of laying down the groundwork slowly over a decade like Marvel did, they're just kind of force fitting everything. And I think that's problematic. Around the same time, the new trailer for Wonder Woman came out, which looked pretty sweet. I was a big fan of the first Wonder Woman. I thought it was one of the best things DC has done. So
I haven't seen it yet, but I also haven't seen a lot of superhero movies.
The first Wonder Woman?
Nope, haven't seen it.
Oh, it's a great like World War I period piece. Like it's a war movie. It's really good. So
very cool. There's no other secondary news item, Sean, but you did have a bone to pick with a Kickstarter.
No. Let's not frame it that way. Let's just talk about a Kickstarter, Alex, because that's what we usually do. By the way, Alex, I have a bone to pick with this Kickstarter.
Oh boy.
Now let me tell you a little bit about it first. So it's Queen Games, and they have a new thing called the Steffenfeld City Collection. The City Collection, and their first two games are on offer here. And there are additional games in the City Collection that will be coming out at later dates. Okay, so first off, cool. Steffenfeld games. Hey, Alex, I like Steffenfeld. Do you like Steffenfeld?
I do enjoy Steffenfeld games.
Oh, my goodness. Well, this sounds great then. So the games are Hamburg and Amsterdam. And I'm like, cool. I'm very interested to learn more about Hamburg and Amsterdam. Well, hold on one quick second, because these are actually reprints. Alex, have you heard of Hamburg before?
I have heard of Hamburg before. I have not played it.
No. You haven't heard of Hamburg before.
Oh, I haven't?
Because
okay. It sounds like a Steffenfeld game.
Well, sure. Hamburg is a reimagining of Bruges. It's a reimplementation of Bruges. Have you played Bruges?
I have played Bruges.
Yeah. All right. And then Amsterdam is a reimplementation of Macau. And in fact, Raquel and I played Macau about a week ago before I learned about this. Macau is fantastic. Bruges is fantastic. These are both excellent games. Macau is in my top third of Feld games. Bruges is in my middle third of Feld games, near the upper half. And so let me get something out here first. First off, I don't want to be a board game hipster that has their old copy of Macau and their less old copy of Bruges. Like Bruges was just in print like a couple of years ago, I think. But Macau hasn't been in print for like at least 8 years, maybe more. I think more. So I don't want to be this hipster board gamer that's like, you guys can't have these sweet games and I don't want them available to people. I am very happy Queen Games is deciding to make these games available. Now, if they wanted to just call this Hamburg and Amsterdam with new art, new components, I would be fine. I would feel zero need to own them. I wouldn't feel infringe. That's a terrible choice of words. The hipster in me is coming out, the board game hipster.
They're infringing on my rights.
My rights as God. I'm such a terrible person sometimes. But I'm owning it though, right? Do I get some credit for owning it, Alex?
No.
Oh, thanks. So I wouldn't feel, I'd be like, cool, I'm glad people can own these games. Have at it. I'm not going to buy these new games because I don't really need to. But here's where I see the problem. The problem is that So Hamburg is different than base Bruges, not just in terms of art and components, but the game is different. Bruges had a variable round length. Now it's 8 rounds exactly. The Bruges cards, there were, I think, four different colors of cards, all mixed up in essentially 2 decks. Now, there's a randomness to the draw of what colors you're getting, because you need certain colors to do certain things. Now the decks are split out evenly, or separately, I should say. So all of the purple cards, all the blue cards are going to be together on their own. There's a new threat color added, the black threat. There's variable endgame points based on how the dice are rolled during the game. It does include some expansion stuff, which again, I would also be fine with. And then they say more gameplay tweaks plus all expansions. So this makes me want to own it.
Uh-huh.
But I don't want to own it. Like, because now I have to get rid of a game, and I don't know that I want to get rid of my Bruges, because I'll tell you what, Bruges looks better than Hamburg in terms of the art and the presentation. I really don't like how this looks, but it's this idea that they've majorly tweaked the gameplay to create this new product, and there's no way to do an upgrade for people who already own the game. And realizing it's a completely different company. Bruges was done by Seaman Games. I get it. I get this is all problematic, and I get this is me being a whiny gamer. I get it, but it's still kind of frustrating. What I would point out too is that for whatever reason, I draw a distinction with a deluxe edition of a game. So for example, Rococo is coming out with a deluxe edition from Eagle Griffin Games, and it's such a step up from the base game. And I think the base game looks great, or the non-deluxe game, but for whatever reason, I am okay. I just got rid of my Rococo, went to Empire to sell in their used stuff because I'm getting the deluxe one. And I was fine with that. It was okay. It's this rebranding, this renaming, and then tweaking the gameplay. Because I don't want to get rid of my Bruges.
Right.
If that makes sense. But I don't want to own multiple copies of essentially the same game. And we kind of talked about this last week when I talked about Voyages of Marco Polo and Voyages of Marco Polo 2. That same thing kind of frustrated me. So then there is Amsterdam, which is a re-implementation of Macau. Difference is almost every card has been revised. Building and person cards are split into separate decks. District card replace office cards and have new effects. Market cards determine tribute, 9 types of goods and 36 spaces for resources. I don't know. Same thing. So it's $65 for the non-deluxe version, $99 for the deluxe version. And honestly, I don't know what you're paying for here. These are pricey and they don't look great. So, I mean, I think that is part of it too. If I were getting a Rococo deluxe level of art and component quality, I don't know if that would kind of lessen the blow, but I want to own these games for purposes of gameplay. I love Macau. I think it's a fantastic game, but after our game of it the other week, Raquel and I were talking about how we think Feld would have designed it or redesigned it had he designed it later in his career. And I don't know. I'm a little frustrated by this. I am not going to purchase either of these.
Okay.
Okay. Tell me why I'm wrong, Alex.
I'm not going to say you're necessarily wrong. It's just more I have an experience with this to some extent.
Sure.
And so one of the projects I did my last year at Gray Fox Games, aka Monochromatic Wolf Play Experiences, aka my former employer, was a game called Tsukiyumi. Do you remember this game, Sean?
No.
Okay. This is a game that I think you would actually really like. It is a game that is a area control game, I think is the best way of putting it. But you have hugely asymmetric, this crazy world created by this gentleman over at King Raccoon Games. where you are trying to take over the planet. It's a planet where the moon has crashed into the Earth, and then crazy stuff happens. There's a race of wild boar people. In any case, this game was released originally through a Kickstarter as a standees edition of the game. Gray Fox got brought on board. We wanted to do this as a miniatures game. Well, the trick with that is the board itself was originally designed, and the tiles themselves were originally designed not for miniatures, but for standees. So there was a hope and a thought and a push to try and help folks who had the original edition still be able to play with the miniatures and have some sort of an upgrade kit without buying the full game. But the trick is the tiles themselves will fit the miniatures, which there are quite a few of them, but they were not designed that way, so it might get a little bit tight. So there was a lot of question about what do you print, what do you reprint, what do you redo as far as cards go, and so that campaign had upgrade kits and had ways of being somewhat backwards compatible, but I will tell you the most ornery backers that we had on that campaign were folks who had the original edition of it and were unsure about upgrading to the miniature side of things because of, they don't want to pay. And it makes sense, $100 and some odd to get a miniatures edition of a game that they already own. So
Sure.
It's a tricky position as a publisher because we didn't do the original standees edition, right? That wasn't something that we created. We think a miniatures edition of this is going to be really cool. How do we offer that while still appeasing the original fans of the game who can, if enough of them are angry enough, torpedo the new campaign?
Mm-hmm.
So that balancing act is really tricky on a publisher standpoint. So I get your annoyance. I get the annoyance of folks who had this edition first. I just know from the publisher side, it's not an easy line to walk.
Yeah, and I 100% get that. And like I said with Bruges, this was a Z-Man game originally. So, and I'm sure they don't have access to the art or rights to the original art. With Macau was a Ravensburger game, I believe. And so I get it. And I'm sure there's a major financial consideration to, we have to print upgrade kits that are going to, let me put it this way. If they had still called it Bruges and Macau and kept at least some of the design aesthetic, it's something that potentially could have been done. Whether they decided it wasn't financially viable, it wasn't worth it. I get that, and I can understand that. But by nature of rebranding it altogether, they kind of prevented that from happening in a certain respect.
Sure.
Which I guess is part of the problem in my mind. But I totally understand. And I'm glad that these are two great games, and I'm glad that gamers are going to have access to them. There's just not enough. It leaves a bad taste in my mouth, and it doesn't make me want to support the project because of that. Because I don't want to get rid of Bruges. It looks better. Macau looks way worse. Macau was a terrible looking game.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of I don't know. It was a Grail game for me, and I picked it up at a Dice Tower flea market, so I don't know. It annoys me. Let's talk about, if you are interested in it though, you can pick up either one of the titles, Amsterdam or Hamburg, the non-deluxe version for $65. You can get the deluxe each. You can get the deluxe versions of each for $99. There's also, let's see here. There's also a couple different deluxe packages, and there's limited numbers on these, but they're $395. And it includes the two deluxe games. It also includes future printings of New York, which is a retheme or a rebranding of Rialto, another Feld game that Raquel and I own and enjoy quite a bit. And then Marrakesh, which is a new game. Hey, cool, a new game. Awesome. I like new games. And Marrakesh is going to feature a cube tower. I hope it's a new game and not just some sort of reimplementation of Amerigo, but we'll see. So yeah, you get you get those 4 deluxe games for $3.95. The 2 when they come out, the other 2, New York and Marrakesh, at some point down the line. There's also like a bunch of other upgrades, and you get a certain collector number, and it reserves your spot or reserves your collector number for future games in the city collection, which sounds like a logistical nightmare, man. That just sounds terrible.
Yep.
Good luck with that, Queen Games. And so this ends on, I believe, September 12th. And so far they've raised like $800,000. So I think they're doing just fine. $781,000. Excuse me, I said September 12th. And September 8th. If you don't own these games, if you don't have access to these games, definitely check it out. They're really good games. And I wish someone had, I don't know. I give up, Alex.
All right. That's fair enough. Your complaint has been noted, and they will deeply consider it while they count their giant pile of cash.
Yeah. What can you do?
All right. Well, that is a look at a whole bunch of redesigned Feld games, the new City Collection. That is a look at the news. Well, Sean, in these tricky times, our friends at Game Toppers want to let folks know that they're still open for business. They're still doing what they can to provide some at-home gaming goodness to help people upgrade their gaming experience while they're trapped at home. So Late Pledge Manager is open on Game Toppers. They have a lot of great bundles on their website, some of which might sell out, so check it out before it gets too late. Also, mats are going to be able to be shipped out relatively soon, so if that's something you've been looking for, hey, great. Thanks to Game Toppers for supporting the podcast and for supporting gamers looking to upgrade their gaming experience.
So go visit them at GameToppersLLC.com.
Sean, we have to come up with some sort of way to open up this ad for Aquatica coming soon from Arcane Wonders in October. I'm trying to think of a good way to do it. So here's my suggestion, Sean. So you let me know. I'll give one, you'll give one, and we'll go with a better one. So mine would just be going, under the sea, and then just get into it from there. What do you think?
Oh, no. Here's what I would do. I would do kind of the like, we're having a natural conversation and we just happen to be talking about our sponsor and one of their games.
Oh.
We'll go like this.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Sean. How are you today?
Oh, I'm pretty well. No, stop. Okay. Hey, Alex.
Hey, Sean.
Do you ever feel?
Am I supposed to not interrupt you? Sorry.
Do you ever feel, as an American citizen, that we don't get all of the good games over here? Like we're just nothing gets released over here, Alex. It is unfair.
The shelves are so empty all the time.
It is unfair. It is unpatriotic. And frankly, I'm just in shock that quality games aren't available here in the U.S., Alex. But thankfully, Arcane Wonders is bringing over a fantastic game like Aquatica, which, Alex, you've played.
I have played it.
But hasn't been available for American distribution as part of some KGB plot to keep gamers. Oh, right, they're the GRU now, right? They're technically the GRU.
Oh.
So anyway, that would be my pitch to start it off, Alex.
I think that's fine. So, or we could just tell the great people about Aquatica, a hand management, engine building, card drafting game set under the sea with fantastic monsters and brave heroes as you battle with other players to conquer the sea. I have played this. I have enjoyed this, honestly. This is a game that has gotten the Dice Tower Seal of Excellence. This will be published under the Dice Tower Essentials line, and it's set to be available in the U.S. in October. And Sean, I think you'll actually like this one a lot.
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now, and the art looks fantastic. I love my card games, so I'm definitely excited for this to finally come over to the U.S.
Yeah, finally. Ugh.
Bunch of anti-American whatevers.
Oh, boy. This is the most controversial ad.
But anyway, if you want to find out more about Aquatica and all of the other amazing board games that Arcane Wonders has to offer, head on over to their website at arcanewonders.com.
And remember, it's never a blunder when you go with Arcane Wonders. They are heroes of legend. Holmes and Watson, the Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde, Dracula. Who reigns supreme, though, on this map of glory? We'll find out. It's Unmatched, Cobble and Fog.
So Unmatched, Cobble and Fog is the latest installment in the Unmatched series of games from Restoration Games. Now, Unmatched, the core system, was designed by Rob Daviau and Justin Jacobson, whereas this particular version, the Cobble and Fog, was designed by Chris Leader. There's graphic design by Jason Taylor, Lindsay Daviau, Courtney Rhodes, and Laura Durand, with board illustration by Ian O'Toole. So this is a tactical miniature duel game where you're one hero and possibly some additional fighters on that hero side. It could be played 1v1 or it could be played teams 2v2. And the object of the game is to basically kill your opponent. Pretty straightforward. You can also, actually, no, that's it. Kill your opponent. Everyone starts at a certain number of hit points depending on your character, and your job is to reduce your opponent's hero, their main character, to 0 hit points, and then you win. That sounds great. So let's talk about how this game is played. First, you're going to set up a board. Cobble and Fog has a 2-sided board that represents different one's like a manor, I guess, and the outside courtyard, and then the other is in the middle of London, the city streets of London. And on these boards are spaces for the characters to occupy with connecting lines that show adjacency. And then really, really cool system here. Not only is there an adjacency component for these spaces, but certain spaces are in certain zones. And so there are certain requirements of the game that say be in the same zone to do X, Y, or Z, or for a range attack, you have to be in the same zone. But certain spaces are multi-zone spaces, reflecting that they're in multiple zones at once. Usually it's, if this space is on the ground, it's going to be adjacent to the other spaces on the ground, like on a sidewalk, for example, but it's also going to be adjacent in the same zone as a certain space on the edge of the roof, because they can kind of see each other, but a space farther along the roof, they're not in the same zone. So it's a really abstract way to handle line of sight and how readily accessible things are to each other on this map. Very streamlined method, and it's pretty interesting. So you're going to have your own deck, and this game comes with 4 characters: Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Invisible Man, and then Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And each deck is individual. It's unique. And there are different types of cards. There are attack cards. There are defense cards. There are hybrid cards. And then there are scheme cards. And you're going to shuffle it up, draw 5 cards, and you're going to take turns taking 2 actions each. I take 2 actions, then Alex, you take 2 actions, and we keep going until one of our heroes is dead. So you have 3 available actions to you. You can maneuver, you can attack, or you can scheme. So maneuver forces you to draw a card. You must draw a card whenever you're directed to do so. One of the reasons there is because if you ever run out of cards and are forced to draw a card and cannot, you have to take a damage to your hero instead. Actually, I think to everybody, right? 1 damage to everybody?
Yes.
If you run out of cards?
I think so. Yeah, all heroes under your control.
Then, after you draw the card, you're allowed to move all of your units, your hero plus the additional fighters if they have any others. So, for example, Dracula has himself, which is a miniature, and then has these 3, I think they're acrylic discs that represent the 3 sisters, the vampire sisters.
Right.
And so they can all move along their adjacencies up to the movement that's printed on the Dracula card, which is 2 spaces, I believe. I think is everyone 2 spaces in this set? I'm pretty sure that they are 2 movement points.
I believe so. Yeah, at least as a base. Yeah, there's ways of boosting it, as I'm sure you'll explain.
There are ways of boosting it, and there's additional movement in some of the other sets, which we'll talk about briefly at some point, but not too much. We're focusing on this production here. And yes, as you mentioned, Alex, you can boost the movement, and you do that by discarding a card from your hand as you're maneuvering, in the middle-ish right side of each card, there's a boost value. It's usually like 2, 3, and that's going to increase your movement for all of your pieces. And so you're going to move. You can move through your own pieces. You can't move through enemy pieces. That's a maneuver, pretty straightforward. The second thing you could do is scheme. Scheme is playing a scheme card from your hand that's going to have some weird, wild effect. You need to be careful because the scheme card needs to match the character that's playing it. So for example, with Dracula, if you want to scheme with Dracula, you need to play a Dracula scheme card. If it's with one of the sisters, it needs to be a sister's scheme card. So you got to watch out for that. And then you carry out its effect. So like for one of Dracula's, it says, remove him from his space and make him reappear anywhere else on the board, gain an action. That's pretty powerful stuff. Cool. So finally, there's the attack action. And the attack action lets you play an attack card or a hybrid card from your hand. You're going to play it face down. There is an attack value in the upper left-hand corner. And then at the bottom, it's going to have some sort of an effect. It could be an effect that occurs immediately upon revealing the card face up. It could be an effect that happens during combat, or it could be an effect that happens after combat. So at that point, once I've played my attack card face down, Alex, you're going to choose to play a defense card or a hybrid card also face down, or maybe you choose not to, or maybe you don't have one. So once you've made that decision, we're going to flip them over simultaneously. We're going to first resolve any immediate effects. Then we're going to resolve any effects that occur in combat. And then we're going to compare my attack value to your defense value. For every point of mine that's higher than your defense, I'm going to inflict that much damage. If your defense is equal to or higher, no damage is inflicted. And whoever has won, let's see, if the attacker exceeds, they've won. If the defender meets or exceeds, they've won. And then there are certain after combat effects that can trigger based on who won the combat. And then any after combat effects get triggered in order of defender first and then attacker. So those are the different types of actions that you can take. And again, you're taking 2 actions per turn, and you could mix and match. You can do 2 attacks. You can do maneuver. You can do maneuver, attack, whatever. So that's the kind of the gist of it. It's a pretty straightforward mechanical game, but there's some interesting depth here. So that is how you play the system of Unmatched. Alex, what were I guess we got to take a step back because you've played the system previously, right?
That's correct. So at my time at Gamma, a long ways back when I was with Monochromatic Wolf, before Unmatched, the first set of this was released, I got a chance to try it out and play it with Justin Jacobson, who is the owner of Restoration Games. And I got my butt kicked. I think I was playing as Robin Hood or something along those lines from one of the early sets. I had enjoyed it. I wasn't, clamoring to go get it right that second. But I could see certainly the potential in it and thought it was Restoration Games does quality stuff, as we'll discuss. And I'd kind of forgotten about the game for a while. It had other sets released since, but it's not something I've been playing. So that's my sense of things leading into this. Wasn't sure, but I had heard bits and pieces that this was a really good set. And so my expectations were high coming in that this was going to be at least very interesting. What about you, Sean? Yeah,
so this had kind of been on my radar since the first set came out. The first set was like Medusa and Robin Hood and King Arthur, and I forget who the fourth person was. It
Sinbad,
was like,
maybe?
Sinbad, yeah. So it's legendary figures and that wasn't a huge draw for me. And I heard very good things about this game, and I figured I would like it well enough. I knew it was kind of a lighter tactical card game, tactical card and miniature game. It reminded me of, I think it was called Anachronism? There was this tactical standee game that came out in the early 2000s, and you opened like packs of them. And it was different, like historical figures. And so you'd pit Genghis Khan against Julius Caesar or something like that. I don't know. There were a bunch of them. I think it was called Anachronism. So that's what it kind of reminded me of. I liked Anachronism. And So yeah, I figured I would like this. I didn't know if it would have too much staying power because I knew it was kind of on the lighter side. And yeah, so I had reasonably high expectations. And yes, it was an anachronism, and it was put out by the History Channel.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I've played this game with Anthony P.
Oh.
Anachronism, not Unmatched.
Sure. Okay. Well, good. I think strong impressions coming in. I think part of that, as briefly mentioned, is well earned. Restoration Games, as we've discussed on several other reviews of the show, this is a company that, for folks who don't know, is dedicated to restoring games that were kind of long forgotten. They're best known, I think, for Fireball Island, I would say, would be the big one. Downforce. This, too, is a restoration as well, right, Sean? It's Star Wars Epic Duels or something along those lines?
Right, which I never had a chance to play.
I'm stunned by that, by the way. It seems like it would have been a game that you would have been all about.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember when it came out, because I feel like it was only a big box store release. Yeah, I'm not sure. All
right. Well, in any case, it's certainly a well-earned reputation. We've talked about a number of their games on this show. So let's dig into this one, Sean. Rulebook, I should say. Did you find this game easy to learn from the rulebook?
Yeah, I think it's super easy. Now, part of that is because it's a fairly straightforward rule set. Another reason, though, is because it's a really good rulebook. It's written very well. I mean, I'm assuming Justin. Well, I expect Rob Davio to be a great rules writer. Justin's a lawyer, and if there's one thing, we can do is make things easy for people to understand. No, but I joke, but it's a very good rule book. It does a fantastic job with layout. Layout is such an important component of a rule book. Like, it really and truly is. When I open up a rule book and it's a non-GMT game and it's a wall of text, it's really off-putting. GMT gets a pass for various reasons. But I think this rule book is really excellent. It's also, there's also some thematic elements within the rule book. Like, there's these classified ads on the front 2 pages, and on the back. And it's just really cool. But no, I think it does a fantastic job. There's it breaks things down really well. I thought this was a very easy game to learn from the rule book. In fact, when I went to Empire to pick it up, Empire's not open for gaming, but I did meet Rory there. We played with masks on, and basically I picked up my copy there and I cracked it open, went through it real quick, and we were playing in 5 minutes. Quick look backs here and there, but for the most part, now that I've played this, I don't know, not quite a dozen times, maybe 7 or 8 times. I don't know that there's anything I need to go back and look at. So
I agree with you. I agree with everything you said. The rulebook itself is stylish. It's well laid out. It's super simple game to learn. It's reinforced well. If you're playing a 2-player game, you can borrow the reference cards from the other characters, or even just flip the other one over for your character if you want. And that lays out just about everything you need to know as a reminder, I found. I found the rulebook a big strength of the game. And let's go to the next step of this, Sean, art and components, because, this thing is smoking on this front specifically, I think. Worth noting that Unmatched is a collaboration between Mondo and Restoration Games. Mondo being best known, I think, for their posters, Sean, and just really interesting, cool art. And this game is super stylish. The look of the cards, really stylish. This insert, Sean, one of the best inserts I've seen for a game like this. Everything has a perfect place, fits in beautifully. You had mentioned on Twitter when I pointed this out that you were annoyed by the fact that the insert was so good.
Yeah, exactly. And so let's talk about that. This insert is so good that I don't want to get rid of it, which I know sounds like, well, sure, why not? But just a quick preview of what my final thoughts might be. I want to own all of the versions of this game.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In fact, I have already picked up the Raptors versus InGen the two-player one. I'm probably going to pick up the original. I know Rory's got them on order at Empire, and I'm just at a shelf space is at a premium right now, Alex, and I don't want to have an entire Calyx cube taken up by these games when really they could all fit in one of these boxes. But it makes me sad to feel like I'm going to get rid of what's such a fantastic insert. Like, I have no problem throwing away a junk insert, no problem whatsoever. But throwing away an insert of this caliber, like, it's a quality insert.
Yeah.
Like, so for example, for the Invisible Man, you have the deck, you have the dial that is the spinning dial, which is his hit points, and then you have a flask that on one side represents when he's in Dr. Jekyll form, the other side represents when he's in Mr. Hyde form, and there's recess spaces that they all fit in with the deck on top, and boom, you're done. There's recess spaces for the acrylic chips for the additional characters. So like Holmes has Dr. Watson, there's a little space for him. There's a spot for the Invisible Man's smoke or fog or whatever it is underneath his cards. Like, it's a super good insert. Really good.
Yeah, it's unreal. And everything is well marked. Everything has its place. I should note the miniature quality I found amazing. I'm not a miniature expert, to be very clear. It's not my
good
thing.
I wouldn't call it amazing. I think they're good. They're good miniatures.
For my money, specifically the Invisible Man miniature.
He's really cool.
Yeah, it's done in such a way where it looks like an Invisible Man. You can't see the person. It's just the hat and the trench coat and then no head or face. And I thought that model was really nice.
Yeah, it's like a hat. It's a hat that's like kind of floating almost.
Yep.
On the cowl of the back of the trench coat.
So I'll get to Abby's thoughts on the gameplay itself as we go through this, Sean. But in terms of the production of this, I oftentimes will ask her how much she thinks a game is, or how much a game is priced or should be priced. And I think the MSRP on this, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, we might need to look this up, is $30, something like that?
I think it's...
Is it 40?
I think the MSRP is 40.
I want to look this up on the fly. But regardless, Abby thought it was more expensive. I think she thought it was a $50 or $60 game.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. MSRP is probably, MSRP is 40. Miniature Market has it for 31 right now. But hey, that's the way it goes. Which, just from a production standpoint, it's just stunning. I have nothing bad to say. The art on the cards is gorgeous. Cards are of a good quality. The iconography is well laid out, clean and clear. It's super cool. I can't say enough good things about the production of this game specifically. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Gameplay wise, Sean, and my fear with this one might have been that it might have been too light because you like your skirmish games, you like your miniature games, but this, I think, because of its play length being so short, probably can fit a nice niche for you.
Yeah, and I enjoyed this quite a bit, Alex. It is on the lighter side for my taste in this style of game, but the fact that you can play a game in 15, 20, maybe 30 minutes max, especially if you're kind of getting used to a new character or a new deck. But for the most part, no, I thought this was really good. I mean, like I said before, I want to get all of it. Give me all of the Unmatched, please. So that's definitely a good sign. And I almost think, Alex, that we need to throw out our separate thematic analysis. Normally it's a throwaway analysis.
Yeah.
Here it's not, because here the theme is so integrated with the deck.
Yes.
The deck is designed to play like this character, this literary character feels. And I think it does it brilliantly with all four of these characters. So do we want to take a minute to kind of talk about the different characters and how they feel different from one another and what their decks are designed around?
Let's move the thematic discussion up, I think, because it is important to this and it's at the core of this game. Yeah, I would say that makes total sense.
Okay. So I think of all of them in many ways, Dracula is the most straightforward. Would you agree?
I would. Let me think about that. Yeah,
there are some There's some intricacies with how you maneuver the sisters and how you position the sisters.
Sure.
But I have found in teaching it to Rory and in teaching it to Raquel, I have preferred to give them Dracula to start.
I think it's not a bad pick, and I think Dracula's fairly. I'd say Holmes and Watson maybe in that same vein too.
I think so. I think Holmes and Watson are a very close second. I think it could be a toss-up between the two of them. But Dracula is pretty straightforward in a lot of ways. He's Dracula, and he's got the three sisters, the women vampires, and they only have one hit point each. All of the non-miniature, the non-hero fighters only have the one. Well, that's not true. That's totally not true. The sisters have one hit point each. All right, let's leave it at that. And so the sisters are kind of expendable, but you can do things as Dracula to bring them back. There's a card that lets Dracula heal hit points, and then if a sister has been removed from play, bring it back in Dracula's zone. Very cool. There's also things where the sisters benefit from surrounding the enemy, and the more they're surrounding him, the more damage this particular. Is it a scheme or is it an attack? Or I think it's
a scheme card. I think it's an alluring something that
right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just think of that scene from Bram Stoker's Dracula with Keanu Reeves. It's kind of cool. There's elements where or attacks where Dracula does additional damage if the sisters are in the same zone as the attacked character. And then things where Dracula can just turn into a bat, escape from combat. He, turns into smoke and goes away. I don't know. There are lots of cool things that's like, yeah, this is how Dracula would play. This doesn't seem like just a generic fighter. It seemed to work. What do you think?
I would say it worked fantastically. I like that idea of kind of being able to set up the sisters in a certain way. Being able to have Dracula kind of follow someone around the board. I should note that this set in general is more melee focused. There are a couple of ranged options, but for the most part, these are characters that like bruising each other, with some exceptions, as we'll talk about as we go. But melee is more the order of the game with this set.
And what's nice too is Dracula has an ability that if he starts the turn adjacent to an enemy, he draws a card. And he damages the other, right? That's right.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also like mind control elements here, to Dracula. There's lots of cool stuff for Dracula. All right. Sherlock Holmes and Watson. Holmes wants to look at your opponent's hand.
Yes.
A lot. There's lots of that. Knowledge is power. That makes total success. Sherlock Holmes is a genius. He uses deductive reasoning to figure things out. And there's also things where you can guess certain values in your opponent's hand, and you can deduce that based on what you've seen and then what you've seen them play, which I think is really a really subtle nod and really cool. And then Watson has a gun, so he's your range character in here. He's got, I think, 5 wounds to start, which is unlike some of the other tokens. And he heals. He's a doctor, so he can heal himself. He can heal Holmes, and it's pretty interesting. I liked it too. I liked both Dracula and Holmes, but they're my least favorite of the two. And I don't mean that I dislike them. I just find the other two much more interesting.
Sure. I would say my favorite you have yet to mention.
Okay. Next is Jekyll and Hyde, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. And I wound up playing all 3 other characters before I played Jekyll and Hyde. And I was before I played with him, I was thoroughly uninterested. Am I saying thoroughly right? That sounds weird. Thoroughly. I was thoroughly uninterested in playing Jekyll and Hyde. It didn't seem interesting to me at all. Boy, was I wrong. Jekyll and Hyde's really cool. So you choose at the start of your turn whether to be in Jekyll form or Hyde form. And about half your cards can only be used when you're in Hyde form. Half your cards can only be used when you're in Dr. Jekyll form. The downside to being in Jekyll form, to being in Mr. Hyde form, is if you maneuver, you take a point of damage. So you gotta worry about that. But most of the really good attack cards, in fact, it might be all of the attack cards, are in Hyde form. So
I don't think all of them, but maybe
most
not.
of them.
Yeah,
I think there are some I know there are some hybrid cards.
Right.
So a card will either say Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, or it'll say any. Just like in the Dracula deck, it'll say Dracula Sisters or any. So there's a little bit of give and take there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so Jekyll and Hyde. So when you're in Dr. Jekyll form, there's some ways that you have to kind of like run away. It's easier to kind of get out of combat because you don't want to get hit. He's got some pretty good defense cards, but you're going to be doing some serious damage when you're in Jekyll form. There's also ways that you can play the cards that are going to let you transform forms apart from the normal time you're able to at the beginning of the turn, which might be helpful. There's some really interesting strategic decisions there, but there's this haymaker ability that Dr. Jekyll, that Mr. Hyde has, where it's a 5 attack card, and you're able, after you see the flip of the other person's card, you're able to discard Hyde cards from hand to add +2 for each discarded Hyde cards. Alex, what was the highest attack value you got from that card?
Oh, I guarantee it didn't compare. I never, so as part of reviewing this, I didn't get to play it as much as you did. So okay. I played against Hyde, and I took a beefy punch from the person playing Hyde. But you probably straight up killed someone with that, didn't you?
I one-shotted Dracula.
Oh boy.
It was Raquel's first game, and I was playing it was my first play of Hyde, and I spent the entire game setting it up. I spent the entire game just crafting my hand, just kind of ducking and weaving. She'd be doing damage to me. I'd run away. I'd be getting the Hyde cards that I need, or the Jekyll cards that I need, and then waited till she ended a turn next to me. And I played a crappy attack card to kind of lure out a good defense card.
Yep.
And then followed it up with another Jekyll card. And yeah, it was bad news. So I really enjoyed that. But then the interesting thing is it's disruptible because you could play a card that has an immediate cancel effect on the attack card. Holmes can get rid of it. Holmes can look at your hand and then do something to get rid of that card from your hand. Even Dracula has some ways to randomly make you discard cards from your hand. So it's definitely disruptible. And you could play a game where you're just going in, punching face with Hyde, doing some good damage, and then just incrementally doing that. But you can also be like, I'm going to do 8, 10, 12, 13 damage to you in one hit. And it's really cool. So that's how Jekyll and Hyde play. Any other thoughts on Jekyll and Hyde?
No, the duality again. And as you keep mentioning, the theme is right there. It's baked in.
So it sounds like then, based on what you've been saying so far, that the Invisible Man was your favorite character.
Absolutely.
Invisible Man was hands down my favorite character. He is a tricksy son of a gun.
Yep.
So the Invisible Man has these 3 fog tokens that start the game in his zone, 3 different spaces in his zone. And the trick with the fog is if he is in a fog space, he gets +1 defense to his defense cards. And what's the other part? There's a second part to that.
That's the main one. There's some other.
Oh, and he can move. He can move from
between them. They're
teleport.
Yeah, they're teleporting portals.
Yeah, they're essentially adjacent. Okay, so when I first read that, I'm like, oh well, that stinks. They all start in this zone here in the corner. No, because the fog is going to get moved from round to round with various card effects. Sometimes you'll move it. Sometimes there's a really powerful card, but the downside is your opponent then gets to move the fog. And it's just, I couldn't remember. It was reminding me of like some movie where, some Invisible Man movie, I'm sure. What was the one with Kevin Bacon? Was that The Invisible Man? That was The Invisible Man from like the early 2000s or late 90s.
Why would I know this, Sean?
I don't know. But a lot of movies where someone's invisible and they're just like popping up out of nowhere, and the person they're attacking just turns and, tries to hit them. This was so cool. This is by far, I think, the most complex of the 4. Definitely would not recommend giving this to someone for their first play. Lot of really cool tactics with this, really cool ways to set things up. And it's just, I think it's nerve-wracking to be adjacent to a fog space because you don't know what's going to happen. There's a card that lets you remove the Invisible Man from the board for the entire round and then come back in anywhere, I think anywhere in a fog. And it's really cool because it ends your turn immediately, because there is a certain tempo to the game, or a certain economy of the game, because you don't want to start running out of cards. I mean, seeing cards is great. Cards give you more abilities. Cards give you more options. But if you're going to start to run out, it turns into this game of attrition. And so twice in a game, because I think there's 2 copies of this card, you can essentially play it, and that's your turn. Your opponent has to do something. And if they can't attack, and if they can't scheme, then they have to maneuver, which means they have to draw 2 cards.
Yes.
And it's really cool. I really enjoyed the Invisible Man. Super, super thrilled by this particular character, but I liked all of them. But Invisible Man and Jekyll and Hyde are my 2 preferred characters.
Invisible Man is interesting because it doesn't seem so overpowered, and it's unclear from kind of first looking at the deck, perhaps, how you go about things. But as you see more and more cards of the Invisible Man, you start to piece together, oh, this is interesting. I can move this fog cloud over here. Oh, I can sneak up behind this person. Ooh, if I'm standing here, that's 2 damage right there. Ooh, I can move away. There's a lot of different funky things that can happen with the Invisible Man. And yeah, easily my favorite character too.
Yeah. So what other thoughts you have on gameplay, Alex?
Well, for all of the positives, and there are a lot of positives with this game, it's as we mentioned, easy to get into, easy to learn, a streamlined mechanic. It has a definite ending point. The game can't drag out forever. I would say there are only a couple of quibbles I would have with this game, Sean.
Okay.
Quibble number 1 is, for a new player learning it, the game mechanics are easy to learn. But unlike, if I sat down and played, I don't know, I'm looking at my shelf here to try and come up with a good example. If I played Quacks with a new player and taught them how to play, or Splendor with a new player and taught them how to play, I might win, I might lose. That new player might win, might lose. They might be at a disadvantage, but there's a chance they could pull out a victory. With this game, if you have knowledge of what your opponent's deck can do, and they don't have knowledge of what your deck can do, it is a huge, huge knowledge gap that can really throw things for a loop. And so I would find it in some ways new player unfriendly in that sense, where it could very possibly be not even remotely close if you are teaching a new player this game. I found myself mentally trying to slow down victory a little bit when I was playing against Abby. Not because Abby's bad at games. She's often frequently very, very good at games, but she just didn't know my deck. And I felt bad about how easily I was kind of going in there and doing this, and it didn't necessarily feel fun. So that learning curve makes it, although it's, again, easy to teach new players, isn't always the best first play experience.
Sure.
So that would be a downside. And by the way, kind of a tangential downside, Abby doesn't like this game. She didn't find it super interesting. She thought it was beautiful, but not her cup of tea. And that's fine.
And she tends to dislike direct conflict. Not always, but yeah, for the most part. She likes being able to build her own puzzle. And even in a game that has conflict like Hanamakoji, there's some sort of feeling of building your own puzzle there. So, yeah, this is definitely not what I would consider her style of game anyway. So You're not wrong. You're not wrong at all. So yeah, that's one of them. The other one I think is, and the good news with this game is it can end fairly quickly, right? And there's a set, this is not going to go longer than, say, a half hour. I wouldn't imagine. It's closer to a 20-minute game if both people have been taught the thing before. So I would say the one trick though is it doesn't always. And the games I played, I didn't have any of them that had a really tense ending to them. Oh, really? Huh.
I maybe had one that had a close or tense kind of ending to it. But most of my other plays had a pretty clear winner or someone who was pretty clearly ahead, and it felt like it was harder to for if you got behind to make up ground. You seem to have a different experience though.
Yeah, no, we had a couple real nail biters where I was down to like 1 or 2, Rory was down at like 3 or 4, and then I had some very close games, and then I'm trying to think, even with the games against Raquel, aside from the, one shot Dracula punch.
Yeah. Dracula punch.
They were fairly close.
Yeah. Fair enough.
And there's life gain in the decks, or sorry, HP gain, to kind of, in theory, to make up for that. But there comes a point in some games when someone's really on the ropes and they have very little in hand. They're forced to spend cards for defense. Otherwise they're going to die, which means they can't, if it's a hybrid card, they can't use it to attack them on their next turn.
Right.
Or they have to spend their turns maneuvering because they're just digging for cards. But I mean, at that point, there's a certain inevitability of the game, but it's still only a couple minutes away.
Yeah.
So it's not a terrible experience.
It doesn't drag out too much, but I did notice it a little bit in my plays. Just dragged out enough to where it was just slightly off-putting. But again, to the positive side of this, the tactics are really interesting. It packs a lot of punch in a fairly short experience, and this game is dripping in theme. Absolutely dripping in theme. You feel like the Invisible Man kind of darting around, suddenly appearing, a patch of fog, and all of a sudden, is there a knife lurking behind there? As Jekyll and Hyde, you're going from mild-mannered to beefy and trying to kind of play between those two things, managing your own hit points, and just super interesting. The battles, these characters feel like the characters. They've come to life, and these aren't IPs I necessarily have a ton of interest in as much. Maybe Sherlock Holmes probably the most out of any of these kind of four IPs. But
interesting.
What did you think I would have a stronger interest in, say, Jekyll and Hyde, or?
No, I don't know. They're just very iconic, 19th century literature characters that have had like broad general appeal for generations.
Yeah, and because of that, they can kind of feel hokey or dated in a lot of contexts, but not here. They don't feel hokey or dated in this context, which I think is a credit to the game.
So have you read League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
No.
The Alan R. Moore graphic novels? Not. Okay. Have you seen the movie?
No.
Movie's terrible. Don't see the movie.
Okay.
Read the graphic novels. The graphic novels are quite good. I highly recommend them because then they have the Invisible Man. It has Jekyll and Hyde, and then it has Mina from Dracula, and she's like, Mina, Dracula's female love interest. And have you not read the book?
Nope.
Have you seen Bram Stoker's Dracula?
No.
What? Really?
Yeah.
It's got Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder doing
in that case,
English accents.
In that case.
Doing terrible English accents. Yeah, so what was interesting to me, when I heard about Cobble and Fog, I assumed it was some graphic novel or some IP, kind of like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, where it was just a smashing up of these different characters. Did you think that?
No, I didn't know what the name reference meant, so I wasn't sure.
But did you think it referenced something?
No, I didn't. I thought it was just kind of a broader reference to the set because
London,
it's a set of characters.
Yeah. London's known for being foggy and all the cobblestone.
Yeah, it makes sense.
I for the life of me, I'm like, what is this? Like, this has to be an IP. I thought it was an IP. But because I knew there was the Jurassic Park one, the Raptors versus InGen. So I'm like, this must be an IP of some kind, but it's not. So that was kind of confusing to me. But can I say, Alex, I'm an easily confusable guy.
Easily confusable Sean, they call him.
They sure do.
No, I did not have that impression as part of this game. So.
And I should also point out, does this apply to you as well? My quarantine caveat, even though this is a 2v2 game as well as a 1v1, I only played this 1v1.
Only played it 1v1. Yep. Could not tell you how the 2v2 experience is.
I would say that if you are picking this up only for the 1v1 experience, then great, by all means. I think I would still enjoy this 2v2, but I'm not in a position to get 2v2 plays in. Maybe check back in the double take after Chewy's played, maybe.
And there's a vaccine?
Yeah, or that, sure. But no, I mean, at this point, I'm planning on getting the other sets. In fact, the one that has me most excited is the Buffy set.
Yep.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It's going to have Willow, Buffy, Angel. Is it Angel? It's Angel. And Spike. And I am all Team Spike, baby.
I have not seen any Buffy, so I'm sure they're interesting. I'm sure they'll do it really well, but I don't know.
And I've seen a lot of speculation on what their abilities are going to look like, which is really cool too. That's kind of a fun metagame to play. So like Buffy is this melee. She's a slayer. She's got incredible speed and strength, and so it's going to be interesting. What does that look like? Willow is a witch, and at a certain point she turns evil. So I'm wondering if there's going to be an evil component to her. I know Spike. It's kind of early Spike when he's evil, and well, he's always evil, but when he's eviler, and his girlfriend at the time, Drusilla, is this clairvoyant vampire. And I'm sure there's going to be some element to her aiding him. And then Angel is also just kind of a melee bruiser. So I'm not sure what's going to kind of set him apart, but I have every trust in their ability to pull it off. I mean, I really do. So I'm super excited. And I should point out, like I mentioned earlier, I did play the Raptors versus InGen. I played the Raptors. Roy played the InGen Hunter and Workers. And it was interesting. We haven't pointed out that apparently all of the sets introduce some slightly different mechanics,
right?
That pertain mostly to the boards. So like in this one, there are secret passages that are the different spots on the board are adjacent to one another that are across the board, but they're not adjacent for purposes of combat, but just for movement. The Raptor board has like one-way spaces, which is kind of interesting. In other words, you can like go down into the Raptor cage, but you can't climb back out. So it's not just slap an IP or add different characters. There's a little bit of additional design that goes into this, but really the design on the character decks is where this game's at, and where it's very skillful design. I mean, these decks felt super thematic. It was very well done. Yeah.
I'm curious to go back and try the first set based off of my experience with this set. I would be curious to see how that compares, and if they've kind of improved as this has gone on.
Are you going to try and pick it up?
I don't know. The problem is Abby doesn't like this enough.
Yeah.
She thinks it's beautiful, but and it's a great 2-player game. I just don't know when I'm going to play it, unfortunately. So
sure.
I'm not sure. It's not for lack of enjoyment of the game on my own personal end, but there's a practical consideration with especially 2-player games. Now, granted, again, this can do 4, so there's other considerations, but yeah, just it's not a set in stone definite kind of thing. I'll put it that way. So yeah, Sean, quick guild thoughts. We had 2 of them. Aaron from Boards Alive said, I haven't played Cobble and Fog, but Unmatched itself is one of my favorite games of the last couple years. It's such a great head-to-head game, easy to teach, plays quickly, feels tense, and the production of the game is top tier. I play it with my 9-year-old son Benji a fair amount. I got rid of a few other 2-player games because this one filled in so many holes for me. A total 6, and I can't wait for more and more characters.
So yeah, speaking of Buffy and Boards Alive, Aaron from Boards Alive, he has another podcast, the Cult Classic Callback, where he and Lindsay speak with a super fan about a cult classic of some sort, and they haven't been exposed to it previously, and so it's kind of them learning about it for the first time. And they're doing a Buffy episode coming up, and part of that there's going to be a Buffy giveaway through Restoration Games. So definitely check out Cult Classic Callback, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that.
Yeah, very cool. And then BJ from Board Game Gumbo said, Cobble and Fog is my favorite set of characters yet as a whole. Throw in the 2 fantastic new mats, and this is a must-buy for any Unmatched fan.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, Alex, let's talk final thoughts. Here at the Dukes of Dice, we rate our board games on a 6-point scale. 1 is poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. Alex also describes it as bad, burn it with fire, or something to that effect.
Bad, very bad.
6 is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. I think I'm curious more to hear what you think, Alex, because I'm not sure where this is going to wind up for you.
So here's the thing. I think the system itself is really well done. The production is gorgeous. The game is thematic and my cup of tea in that sense. It's a really well done 2-player game, and 2-player games can catch my interest a lot of times for that reason. I did mention some issues with some games not feeling super tense and maybe a first play problem. But all in all, I think the easy description for this one is a 5. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. I would rarely turn down a play of this personally. I know Abby doesn't like it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I can't enjoy this with other gamers, and I certainly intend to. This is one that the system is thematic, the system is easy to teach, and I think if you take a little bit of time maybe to go over the deck and the abilities with the player you're playing against, if it's their first time, I think you're going to have more enjoyable experiences. I think it's something I would have, in hindsight, done a little bit more. So there you go. That's no, I'm a solid 5 on this one, Sean.
Okay. Yeah, I thought this might kind of hover somewhere between a 4 and a 5 for you. But cool. Very cool. So yeah, this is not going to be a 6 for me. 6 is an all-time favorite contender for the top 10. It doesn't quite rise to that level. I think you're correct, Alex, in that for a skirmish style game, I want a little more meat on the bones, which I don't know if that's a fair standard. I'm thinking of games like Mordheim, Necromunda. Honestly, I haven't played more complicated skirmish games in a while, and that's kind of too bad because they're a ton of fun. But no, this is going to be a very solid 5. A great game will rarely turn down a play of it. I think this is a really great, light, tactical card game / miniature game. I agree it's easy to teach the rules, and I agree there's a bit of a learning curve, especially with deck knowledge. But I think that's surmountable with a little bit of persistence. I think it's a great product. And like I said early on, I'm going to be picking up all of the Unmatched. I'm going to be getting Buffy when it comes out. I think it's great. I think it's a really solid system. And I am very curious to mix and match and to play Buffy versus Dracula, right? Or to do something weird like Raptors versus the Invisible Man. I think that's where the really interesting stuff is going to come in, is when you're smashing up these different characters out of place at a time. I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah. I think that's the most promising thing about this system as a whole, is because it incorporates so many of these different mechanics and different kinds of characters. Those matchups are fascinating from a thematic perspective. And I'm curious to see what other stories can get generated as more and more sets come out.
Sure.
So there you go. That is our review of Unmatched, Cobble, and Fog. Sean gives this one a very solid 5, and I give this one a very solid 5 as well. Before we wrap things up, though, we have a Duke's Double Take to get to, Sean. Episode 207, the Plan B episode, where we reviewed Century: A New World. I know we did that name based off of Plan B games. Was there something else we were supposed to review and then didn't?
That's a good question. I will look that up, Alex.
I'm curious about that. Anyway, at the time, this is, for folks who don't know, this is the third game in the Century series, after Century Spice Road and Century Eastern Wonders. I gave this one at the time, Sean, a 5. I said it was satisfying, played well with a wide variety of player counts, and felt fresh within the line. You gave this one a 4. You said you enjoyed how snappy it is. You think it would be a higher score, would be easily a 5 for you if it was a Gateway 5. New World, you said you liked slightly better than Spice Road. So you like this one the best out of the 3 in the series. Sean, have you played this game since?
Alex, I have not, and I fully expected to play it in the year since. So there have been multiple cullings that have occurred in the last year, and it was never on the chopping block. So that's kind of a good sign. And trust me, I looked at it, I'm like, am I keeping this? Am I getting rid of it? What am I going to do? And I'm like, no, I'm going to hold on to it because it was snappy, but still had enough depth. I liked it. And I think I remember saying on the podcast that, this could be something that I could see Chewy playing in a couple of years. I've kind of shied away more recently from saying that because, number one, I don't want to force her into anything. And number two, there's going to be plenty of games for her to play in a couple of years if that's what she wants to do. But no, I haven't played it, but I don't think I would change anything about my score. I mean, like I said, I gave it like you said, I gave it a 4. It wasn't going to be a 5, and it's certainly not falling to a 3.
Yeah. Sean, I have played this once, I believe, since our review. And I feel much the same as you do. The quality of this game is still really high. It's just not the kind of game that I'm necessarily going to pull off the shelf that frequently. But I did recently put up on the Guild a Dukes of Dice X6 giveaway, where I gave away 6 games from my collection. And I listed, I think, maybe 10 or 15 that were eligible to be chosen from. And this was not one of them. And it wasn't a consideration to be one of them. So I think I'm maybe not as enthusiastic of a 5, but I think it's still, I would call it closer to great than good. So I'd still be at a 5 on this one. So there you go. BJ from More Game Gumbo said, I enjoyed my play of Century New World with Alex at Dice Tower Con 2019. The morning after the Baseball Highlights 2045 first mention, actually was, tournament, but have yet to play it since. I liked it better than Original Spice, but less than Eastern Wonders. That being said, I definitely play it again and can't wait to hear if Sean has played the big all 3 games at once thing, which you have not. Ooh. I have not. And I don't know. I don't think that's likely that either of us will.
Well, here's the problem. I really dislike
Eastern Wonders.
The second game.
Yeah.
I really dislike it. I like Spice Road quite a bit. It's a great intro game. And I liked New World, but I really dislike the second game.
Fair enough. Yeah. I didn't get enough of a taste of Eastern Wonders to dislike it a ton, but it was my least favorite of the 3, if memory serves. So there you go. That is Century: A New World, Duke's Double Take. Sean, you are staying right there at a 4, Gateway 5, and I'm at a lower, but still a 5.
Let me report in, Alex.
Yes.
So originally, I'm looking at our Dukes on Deck Guild, or our Dukes on Deck thread on our Board Game Geek Guild. And initially for this episode, we were supposed to review Watergate. And you had said that there's a 5% chance that we may not be able to review Watergate for this coming episode. And then after about 15, 20 naming suggestions, you're like, well, that 5% chance is now a 100% chance. And so we had to swap in Century Spice Road. So, excuse me? Nope. Century New World.
Now, question. Was that because you couldn't get it from Rory?
I don't think so. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember why that was. Was that the start of the Rory, Rory as Lucy pulling the football away from Sean as Charlie Brown?
Yes.
Was that the start of it?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And then there was also big news that you were giving. Was that Leaving Gray Fox?
Oh, that would have been about the time. Yeah. Cause I had put in my notice in August.
Right.
And right around this time, I had kind of come to the conclusion that it was time to move on to different pastures. So, yep. Yeah, that happened right around this time. That's crazy to think about. But yeah, it's been about it. I was still at Gray Fox through early September. Right. So we're closing in on that time, but we're not quite there yet. But yeah, crazy to think about. A weird year in the year since, there's no doubt. So that is our look back at a Plan B episode. But of course, Sean, one more order of business, the honorable mentions. And I will start things off because this one starts off with a song. D. Shannon with a suggestion, A Holmes New World. Not good.
Ooh, that was rough. Maybe an octave lower? Doing an octave lower.
I always tend to sing a little bit higher than I should.
Yeah.
A Holmes New World.
Okay. All right.
That was better.
All right.
That was better.
Yeah, that was better. So of course that's a riff on the Aladdin song, Alex. You're a big Aladdin fan.
Yeah, it was my favorite Disney movie growing up.
Yeah. So Sherlock Holmes and yeah, that all makes sense. All right. And then Steve O'Rourke, the name father, suggested 19th century literature. Now, the century, of course, is talking about the Century New World, and we're talking about 4 different characters from the 19th century literature. So, hey, that just makes sense.
Yeah, it just makes sense, Sean. Can I go back for a quick second? If folks on this podcast are musical fans of any kind, there is a thing called Team Star Kid, which does musical parodies, and they did one called Twisted, which was a take on Wicked, but basically Aladdin from the perspective of Jafar, and it's amazing. Yep. So, there you go. Yep. And number 3, also a song from Baker Mitchell. Oh, what's that? Sorry, not Baker Mitchell. It's his arch ego, Baker Mitchell, having nothing to do with the fact that we didn't have 6 different people to pick names from. It had nothing to do with that. His suggestion was, "The world is a vampire."
I'm surprised you know that song.
I do know that song.
I know. I'm just saying. I'm surprised that you know it.
Well,
That's
I do.
all.
So
I know.
that.
I'm just saying. I'm surprised. Just let me be surprised, Alex.
Referencing Century: A New World and referencing Dracula in Unmatched.
And then BJ from Board Game Gumbo suggested Boys Meet World because, hey, it's a bunch of boys. Well, there's the sisters. There's the sisters too. But yeah, it's Dracula, Watson Holmes, Visible Man, Jekyll and Hyde. So it's the boys and they're meeting World, which is New World. So yeah, good job, BJ.
Don Gilstrap came in with 19th century duels and then immediately apologized to Steve O'Rourke for taking the 19th century concept, but still a pretty good name in and of its own right.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, thank you, Guild. We appreciate all your help as always. We couldn't do it without you, and I mean that quite literally. Quite literally. All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 232. Thanks again to Baker Mitchell for the title suggestion, Exploration, my dear Watson. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to The Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on August 27th, 2020. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers, LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders, find titles at ArcaneWonders.com, and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on.